Use the code mitochondria for 30% off. I don't know what I'm doing. Anyhow, hello. I am back yet again with another video. So if you're new to this channel, hello once again. I am Madeline, and last fall I spent about a month and a half in an intensive outpatient for an eating disorder. Outpatient is pretty much like your non-hospitalization treatment, and intensive outpatient, as you can kind of infer from the name, is a more intense version than your typical going to a therapist once or twice a week. In this particular program, I was in a group setting, also seeing an individual therapist once a week. Really, if I had to summarize what IOP did for me, it was doing a deep dive as to what drove me to take such extreme measures on my own body. What were those core beliefs that I was holding on to, or things that I was hoping to get by having a smaller body or more control. I was discharged from IOP a week before Thanksgiving. I'll leave a link to my little video docuseries that I filmed while I was in IOP down in the description below. I was seeing a dietitian about once a month, and now I'm going back to therapy. I had been seeing a therapist until spring break, and then, you guessed it!
Who's that Pokemon?
It's Corona time!
And there's definitely been a lot of challenges in that time period. Let me preface this by addressing two things. Firstly, even in the most optimal settings, recovery is challenging. Taking care of yourself is challenging. And then all the uncertainty in this uncertain time just adds another level of difficulty, or more like 50 layers of difficulty. And second, I realize that I am incredibly privileged, and I'm not saying this to diminish my struggles or to diminish anyone else's struggles, but I feel like I have to address this because I realize that there are lots of things that are helping me in my recovery that I take for granted way too easily, that need to be addressed and I need to be aware and mindful of. Not so that I can brag to other people, or to get savior points for being woke, but rather to realize that there's inequities when it comes to care, when it comes to resources, when it comes to how I'm treated or how I'm viewed as a person who's in recovery. And I realize that those are all things that can impact a person's journey. But again, as I said, I can be mindful of these things that I'm thankful for, but also still struggle. And I guess that's kind of one of the themes that I want to address on this channel, that just because someone can have it worse doesn't mean that you should feel bad for struggling, or you should feel bad for not being as far as you want to be. Often when I think about mental illnesses, particularly depression and anxiety, when people are more quick to say things like, it could be worse, or you should be happy that you have X, Y, and Z, I think of this as giving someone with a peanut allergy who's hungry a peanut butter sandwich. Sure, there's nutritional value in that sandwich, but offering that sandwich to someone who has a peanut butter allergy isn't going to do anything. You can't just wave that sandwich in front of them and tell them, hey, there are kids in third world countries who would love to have this sandwich and you're having an allergic reaction? How dare you? Of course, my analogy isn't perfect, but what I'm trying to communicate is that someone else having it worse doesn't invalidate what you're going through, and vice versa. And I think that it's important to be aware and thankful for the things that we do have, but it's also not something that we can use to just kind of brush off any problems or any troubles that we have. Obviously, the pandemic is not the time of our lives for the most of us, whether you do struggle with mental illnesses or whether you don't. It's just a terrifying time to be in when there's so much uncertainty, a constant deluge of terrifying information coming out every second, seemingly. And it's hard to stay sane in a world with so much chaos and uncertainty. But then it's also difficult to navigate the world when things aren't falling apart completely, or so it seems. I've noticed for myself and for a lot of people close to me that trying to stay sane in the midst of it all is a lot. And unfortunately, this has kind of set me back in my recovery a bit. I would like to note I am not at my worst in terms of ED behaviors, thankfully, but I have definitely realized that I've let a lot slide. And there's just been a lot more obstacles, I guess you could call them, that are hindering me from pursuing recovery head on, or rather different excuses that my head is trying to find to stall recovery as much as possible, or even take back steps that I made during recovery. And through this video, I want to address 5 different things that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't actively trying to pursue recovery, to recenter myself and remind myself why I pushed through as hard as I did for the past several months, and why it would be a tragedy. It sounds dramatic, but it would be a loss if I were to fall back to old patterns. And I hope that this video encourages you to do something similar and remind yourself why you fought through for so long and so hard. This is getting cheesy. Let me just get to it. So the first thing that I wouldn't have had if I wasn't trying to recover or gave recovery a shot was focus. Let's say I would do not so great on an assignment. I would see that grade, think that this was the result of my lack of willpower that's shown not only on my test or assignment or whatever, but also in my ability to restrict. And so I would restrict or compensate for my lack of restriction accordingly, and it would be this vicious cycle where I would be dissatisfied with something that I did. I would compensate accordingly. I wouldn't be in the right headspace to do better next time. And then it'd just repeat itself until the semester was over. I needed to fuel up here first. In the fall semester, while I was in IOP, I did notice a significant jump in my academic performance. Not quite where I wanted it to be ideally, but still a jump. And part of this is probably because I changed my major to something I was way more passionate about. But I can't deny that another large aspect is that I was eating literally twice as much as I had been in the past and keeping it all down. Another thing that I probably wouldn't have had, or not nearly to the same extent as I had, was actually being able to do things. Again, current circumstances, that's changed a bit, but last fall I attended more concerts in one semester than I did in my entire life combined. Part of that is because I never left the house while I was in high school, but also like in college, there were so many opportunities where friends offered to go to concerts with me or go to events or what have you, but then I would either be drained or I would be too anxious about what if this happens, what if there's food and I don't know how to control myself, and all these different what if scenarios that I would just talk myself out of going. And last fall I went to at least 4 concerts. No, 5. I went to 5 concerts in one semester, and that was something that I probably would have never thought that I would be able to do on top of school and work and all that, but I was actually having enough energy to do that without overdoing it on the Diet Rockstars. Beforehand, I would depend on energy drinks just to stay awake during lecture, because even after 8 hours of sleep, I would just be falling asleep everywhere. But I was actually going places and seeing bands that I liked since middle school and high school. I even went to a mosh pit for the first time, which was, let's say, an adventure. I'm 5'2", 5'3"-ish, and the people in the mosh pit were, let's just say, a little bit taller than me. But that is an experience that I will remember because it was a day to remember concert. But jokes aside, it was something that I would have never seen myself do, but I did. The third thing that I'm thankful for that I got to experience because I gave recovery a shot is being able to connect with people. So I first started becoming really vocal about eating disorders in 2019. During NIDA week that year, I wrote a piece in my university's paper about different students' experiences with eating disorders. Anyways, the process of writing that piece was therapeutic for me. It helped me come to terms that I do struggle with something that has a name, eating disorder. It's not just some weird food thing that only I have experienced and only I will ever understand. It's something that hits home for a lot of people, whether it be that they personally went through it, they personally have disordered thoughts around food, they know someone who's going through it and are seeing the painful parts of recovery. A lot more people have been impacted than I had thought, and I was able to use that piece to connect with even more people, and that was something that was super powerful and empowering for me. And a similar thing happened again when I published a blog post about being in IOP while being a full-time student, which was intense, but we made it. The response that I got wasn't overwhelming in the sense that so many people found my blog post and commented, but I just didn't think that I would be able to help anyone with that blog post. But one of the comments was from someone who's a fair bit older than I am, who found strength in that blog post. And that was something that I didn't expect. I've received like a handful of messages from people who I've become internet friends with, who are going through recovery from disordered eating or eating disorders, from ditching dieting, what have you. It's just super cool to see that the experiences that I went through, although they were awful to go through, can help other people feel less alone or find community, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The fourth thing that I'm glad that recovery has allowed me is saving time, because I can't tell you how much time I've wasted on body checking or logging in every morsel of food to MyFitnessPal. That's not to say that counting calories or checking physique is inherently bad. It might be a helpful tool, but I was doing this to the extreme, and it was taking up way more time than I would like to admit. I know I'm not the only one who has played this game of calorie Tetris where you're trying to slice just a little bit more of this food or just a little bit less of this food just so that the calories add up perfectly. It's exhausting. And it's like, I have a paper to do that's due tomorrow, but all I can think of is having the exact perfect measurement of PB2 on my celery sticks. That's not an efficient use of time, and I knew that, but it felt like kind of like in SpongeBob when Plankton was remote controlling SpongeBob's brain, and SpongeBob was like, no, I can't give Plankton the Krabby Patty formula, but then his brain was being hijacked and he was walking to the chum bucket anyways. That was how it felt when I was trying to go through this alone. And I felt like, this is my life, this is the only way that I can function, this is how I function, and I'm just gonna have to accept that. And that took up a lot of time, a lot of mental energy, a lot of sanity, a lot of patience. And the fifth and final thing, well, not final because I'm sure if I sat down and thought a lot more, I could list a lot more, but the fifth thing that I want to address in this video is being able to just share myself with others. And this sounds very vague, very cheesy, but hear me out. I think the realization that food is way more than just fuel was when I made hot dog for the first time in a good number of years.
Yeah.
No, not hot dog.
No. Yeah.
It's magnifique. And one of my favorite memories that I made junior year was when my boyfriend came to visit me. We do long distance during the school year, and we made hot dog together. Is it the most nutritionally dense food? No. But the experience of making and eating hot dog is far beyond what any app could tell you. It was about sharing an experience, both previous ones where I made hot dog in the past as a kid, but also new ones of making it in the present with someone who is very dear to my heart, who I love very much, and being able to share that with someone for the first time. I realized that in order for me to truly move on to the next chapter of my life, I needed to be able to allow myself these kinds of moments in life. And if I don't, then that's not a life that I really want to have. And I'm just thinking of like the different times I baked for people in the newspaper, for just because, the different times I got to share different snacks, different dishes. And were these kale smoothies? No, I mean, I might share a kale smoothie with someone in the future. Smoothies are still one of my favorite foods, but for the sake of examples, it wasn't something nutritious like a kale smoothie or an acai bowl or anything like that, but these experiences that I was getting to share with people by bringing in food, by going to that potluck or that one Friendsgiving, for getting to try out different places in the city that I had been too scared to. I've come to realize that the fear of not having these moments with loved ones far outweighs the fear of what a certain food will do to me. Anyhow, that is it for today. Thanks so much for sticking around with me, and I hope that this video inspires you to reflect on what are different things that has been a highlight for you in recovery. What are things that you look forward to as you progress in recovery, or things that you're just grateful for in general? I'd love to hear your thoughts below. And again, the code for That Sounds Gay t-shirts is mitochondria. I don't get a dime from it, but you do get 30% off, so check out the link below. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you later. Bye.